And now, here's Brendan.
Well, as Whovians or sci-fi fans, we all have strong opinions, crafted and developed by insight, in-depth knowledge, and lived experience of all the stories on what Doctor Who should look like, feel like, be like. In other words, if you were Doctor Who producer or showrunner, what would you do with Doctor Who? And tonight, I'm really grateful for having Divine and Dragon Christian on. He's always got great insights. That's how we got talking in the first place, when he used to send me lots of detailed analysis of this. But I'm going to be strict tonight because it's going to be a role play. I'm going to be like the BBC commissioner, one of those who's actually interested in a future Doctor Who, and I'm going to ask each of my panelists what would they do if they were Doctor Who showrunner. But my patience is slim, and so I'm going to be going, well, yeah, right, okay, right. So here we go then. So thank you, Christian, for coming on for our debut one.
No
You see, he's behaving because he knows I'm the BBC commissioner now. Right. So, I'm going to call this element the inheritance factor for everybody at home, but basically, this is the section where we Doctor Who fans know there may be an issue with something that's been done in the past to do with Doctor Who. I'll call it the inheritance factor, but it's open to the showrunner, the potential showrunner, because I may not give you the job, Christian. So, as BBC Commissioner, have we got a problem with Doctor Who that we need to deal with?
Absolutely, there is a problem that you have to deal with. And the important thing to remember is Doctor Who has a long history. It has a history that binds it between generations. It was a family program. It had broad reach. Look at the multi millions of views that each episode received in the 70s and 80s. Look at the multi millions of views that were possible as recently as 10 years ago. Look at the number of views that it received recently. That suggests to me, number one, that if it's done right, the views are there. The audience is ready and waiting.
But
If
you're
it's done
telling
badly, you don't have it.
What you're telling me is this future showrunner, and as BBC commissioning editor, I want to say to you, there's no programs apart from Traitors and one or two others that get great overnight ratings, and overnight ratings not that in thin anymore. It's about engagement, don't you know, and it's about various other things. So are you over setting that up because we want Doctor Who to carry on, and we want to know if you're the right man for it? So basically, are we putting too much on wanting ratings from the 70s?
That's not the entirety of it. You have to look at merchandise, you have to look at other mediums of delivery. When a program is done well, it's going to reach beyond just views. It's going to reach into other areas of the commercial marketplace, and it's going to reach into the cultural zeitgeist. People are aware of it and they're talking about it beyond just what they see on the screen.
Right. Potential showrunner Christian. In my mail that I get as BBC commissioning editor, hear from various toxic fans out there, and I get the list. The list is ridiculous. Timeless Children, Rogue, Susan, The Bi Generation, The 14th Doctor, Mavity, Sonic Screwdriver, Davros Now Has Legs, The Rani, the Omega, the Sutek, The Gay Doctor, the low ratings that you've just mentioned, the one-off episodes, too many arcs, too many Easter eggs. This is what Doctor Who fans keep telling me, but I'm a BBC commissioning editor. Should I be bothered about any of those things?
Only insofar as the things that became problematic damage the brand, damage the credibility of the character, damage the canon of the show. You'll notice that all the things that were complained about will either deal with damaging established canon, like the Timeless Children, or damage the nature of the characters concerned, such as the Doctor now being blatantly sexual and sexualized. This isn't what the show is about. If you return to a format that was successful, it's going to be universal and it will offset a lot of those problematic issues that people take great umbrage at seeing when they appear in a beloved show.
So, as the potential new showrunner for Doctor Who, are you telling me you will possibly, in some of your stories, deal with some of the issues from the past? In other words, what I'm saying to you, and I'm trying to work this out when I have everybody on and I'll make them my decision. Do you want a hard reboot? Do you want the show rested for a while we get things sorted out? Do you want to continue as is? I suppose the version you're not bidding for is cancelled, but basically, what version are we going for?
I think it's fair to say that you want to be able to capitalize on the linear history of the show up until there were egregious problems present. And then you need to find a way to deftly and creatively craft a set of stories that helps correct a few, not all, but a few of the most egregious problems, and then sets a clear slate for the story going forward. So the continuity in this universe is still retained, but the show has the capacity to go back to what it was at its core.
The thing is, as a BBC commissioning editor, I want to say to you, when I get the list of complaints from all these Doctor Who fans, it's always when we do give them mentions from Classic Who. I've just mentioned them, Sutek, Susan, everything, Davros. So it seems to me, when you're arguing for continuity, as soon as we do continuity, you'd slag us off.
The
So
continuity has to be done right. Therein lies the key. Having Sutek sleeping on top of the TARDIS like Snoopy was not an effective revisitation of that character. Having a Skeletor cameo of Omega as he can't fit his way through a door is not an effective return of that character. So you can bring back something that's classic, but something that's classic that you bring back has to be respected both in appearance and in spirit. You can't bring something and then redesign it to serve a purpose other than the effective narrative of the story.
before we move on to hear about your ideas for what you'd want from Doctor Who, I just want to get this established because in my interviews, I'm asking all future showrunners this possibility. So, is there anything from these complaints from Doctor Who fans that we really should address? I give you the list, there may be more stuff, but is there something where you're going, no, we have to address that? Or are you going to be one of the showrunners? You don't give me that impression where you're just going to start moving forward. Is there something that we have to deal with?
If there's a single narrative component that has to be addressed, it'll have to be the timeless children, primarily because that covers volumes of past history of the show and identities related to the character. You can have alternates, you can have variants, you can have parallel universes, but if at its core you've redefined who the Doctor always was and where the Doctor started from, that is a bridge a lot of classic fans are not willing to cross. They're done with it. They'd rather burn that bridge down than incorporate that as part of the canonical history of the show.
You belong to us.
Show.
Now, as we've been moving forward as a global brand, we keep getting told by Doctor Who fans, certain Doctor Who fans, that we are doing it wrong because they say we're losing something that's quintessentially British, that there's something uniquely British that Doctor Who should be, and yet we're trying to go global. We want a black doctor, we want an Asian doctor, we want a gay doctor, we want inclusivity. And yes, we have DEI policies and all the rest of it, but this is to represent the world. So, what are you wanting us to do when you're given possibly the job as the showrunner? How far are we going to go down with a global Doctor Who or a British Doctor Who?
It has to remain a British brand. It has to remain a British show. No one's complaining about a variety of British programs that were very successful globally, despite maintaining a British identity. Monty Python, in the venue of comedy, is quintessentially British on all fronts. Yet it has gravitas in the West, certainly, and among Anglophiles in the Far East. So it does have a bearing for people to pursue. The same thing can be said for Doctor Who, provided it's not trying to be something that it's not supposed to be. Now, if you want diverse representation, that could be party to the characters that accompany the Doctor. But in terms of the locales that are very specific to the program and the identity of the Doctor himself, it needs to remain essentially British.
Whatever that means. Because this is the classic one. We could argue about what is British all day. A black Brit, a gay. I know. I'm being mischievous here. I mean, everybody. I'm enjoying being BBC commissioning editor here. This is great. Right. I think I'd be bloody good.
Hey, you're talented at it. They should be picking you up any day now.
Yeah. I've given myself the job, isn't that amazing? So anyway, what we're really interested in, because we all know you, Christian, you've become a good friend and you're a panelist, a regular panelist on here. So we want to know, if you were Doctor Who showrunner, what would the Doctor, your Doctor, be like?
I would probably go with an older Doctor. Yes, I know there's a marketplace for someone who's young and handsome and virile and attractive. And obviously, during the New Who run early on, there was an appeal for that. But in many respects, of the most recent Doctors, I think the strongest representation of that character was Peter Capaldi. And you want to capitalize on that type of representation. And part of the reason is it allows you to more readily walk back from the temptation of writers to sexualize the character. You know, when you see Tennant in 2007, yes, you could picture him as a romantic potential for a companion. You didn't readily see that with Capaldi. So you want to go for someone who's eccentric, who's distinct and different in some capacity, but also reflects the sagacity of age and time, which you don't readily get from someone who's in their 20s. So, McGann, who is a favorite of mine, would be a wonderful actor to bring back, especially now that he's got the gravitas of years under his belt, to incorporate a new version of that character.
Give me the loving. I bet you thought it was a yummy yeti.
But of course, I know you're pitching for the job, but obviously at the BBC, we know our demographics. And one of the areas we want to grow is the younger market. And when we've had Capaldi before, when we've had an older Doctor before, it tends not to win the demographics over. It wins the tried and tested Doctor Who fans, yes, but not the rest. And we need to grow this brand. So when you say you want an older Doctor, we are concerned. Are we just going to go back to the Capaldi years?
You're not necessarily going back to the Capaldi years. That's where the companion is critical. So if you've got a companion that's strong, that's actualized, that connects with young people in a very real way, that's how you make that happen. When people look back during the first 2 years of New Who, the companion de facto was Rose, and Rose was a representation of the young audience that they were trying to appeal to. That's what you go with. You don't necessarily have to recreate a Clara who had problems of her own based on just her personality. But if you create a character that is compelling and appealing and relatable for the young audience, that's where you bring those characters in.
Yeah! Woohoo! Woohoo!
Now, I have to say, the feedback we get is all over the shop on this one. So if I said to you, would your Doctor be, obviously you've told me he'd be a bit older, and it would be a he, would it?
Oh, yeah.
Okay, so he would be an older Doctor. Space Jesus, an all-action hero, because this is what's been successful with David Tennant. We're going to tell you that New Who has been a very successful brand. So where are you wanting to take this Doctor character?
This is a Doctor who is able to be physical necessarily. You don't necessarily have to have someone who's decrepit, walking with a cane, hunched over, and incredibly a genius, but not really able to do anything physically. So you've got to have someone who has a strong physical presence and a lot of physical agency. But It is the sagacity and the intellect, the morality of that character that really stands out, that the audience should be able to trust. If you were in a crisis situation, this is a person that just at first glance I would trust to help get me out of it. Sight unseen, if I did not know who these people were, and there were two versions of the Doctor in the room with me at the same time, and one was David Tennant and one was Peter Capaldi, who would I instinctively turn to as the sage who would come up with a solution? I would probably turn to Peter Capaldi. There's something about the gravitas of age and sagacity that speaks to me as a powerful, compelling element of any kind of Doctor Who story.
Leave the girl. It's the man I want.
That's where
Now-
you want to go.
Now we keep getting told by RTD, and as you know, RTD is a super fan, and he's been a very successful showrunner. So we often listen to Russell T Davies as that, and he's said about going forward with any future showrunner. He has said the Doctor needs to be much more emotional. The Doctor needs to be quite human. The Doctor does need to be able to engage an awful lot more. He made some reference about Pyramids of Mars and the time when the Doctor seemed colder and very alien, and so we've bought into that with the New Who era. Where are you pitching this before we give you the job or not?
You cannot have an overly human Doctor. It kind of reminds me of the attempts to retransfigure the character of Spock in Star Trek. Spock is an alien. His foundation is logic. Okay, yes, he has an emotional side, and it's quite fun to poke at it periodically as you pierce the veneer of stoicism that the character presents, to play with it underneath. That works in extreme moderation. But as a general actionable character, you cannot have the Doctor so emotionally traumatized and incapable of functioning that he's not a credible source. If you look back at the most recent incarnation and the number of times Ncuti Gatwa lost emotional control of himself, that does not bespeak strength of the character.
But doesn't this betray that? Hold on, are you going against television standards and how things have changed over time? Because lead characters now need to have an engagement with the audience, an empathy with the audience. That seems to be where it's going. And you seem to be saying we need to go back to a different television time, when the Doctor was aloof and different from the audience. And we're worried about that, because can we risk having a Doctor character who is so not human, acts very differently, might look callous sometimes, might look cold? We're worried about, safe spaces and how we project the BBC now, whether that's a good look.
And that's where I come back with this response. So has going all emotive in the last couple of years worked brilliantly? How well did the audience receive to that variant of the Doctor since RTD returned? And it has not landed. So go back to a version of the Doctor that does land.
Well, remember, this is an interview, and I'm the one who decides whether you get a job. So if you want to argue with me, carry on. I'm loving this. So, okay then. You say you're a self-appointed Doctor Who fan. I remember RTD doing that, and you've got ideas for the future of Doctor Who, as RTD did when he gave us the whole kind of pamphlet in 2004. So, what is your idea for the future series of Doctor Who?
I would probably go with 3 structured, continuing stories over the course of a season. If you were able to do as many as 12 episodes in a season run, that means you're breaking up a core story between 4 installments each. That way you can actually dig into a particular narrative much more deeply, much more effectively. And if you're looking for pathos, a story that lands, that's the way to do it, because the story has room to breathe and you can actually stretch it out. One of the advantages of doing that is based on how you structure it. If you structure it back down to the 30-minute delivery or installment, now you're basically talking potentially upwards of 8 shorter broadcasts for a particular story, or you can add another story in there if it fits out. One of the problems that you're going to see with most recent installments is they're visiting these different places. None of the places, none of the stories, certainly during RTD2, effectively landed. Some of them turned out to be incredible nothing burgers. And yet, if you create the right setting, you can actually save money because you're using fewer sets, you're using the same location for an extended period of time, and you can dig into the stories more deeply. I would probably go tonally away from the light camp, emotive approach that RTD is famous for, and back to something that's a lot darker, because that's what will stick with people. 50 years from now, people still remember Classic Who. They will not remember this era of Doctor Who.
Oh, this is nice. This is nice. Just remember, I'm your granddad. Yeah, Susan. Wait, what's going on here? Put your hand off that. What's it? Love all your work on Doctor Who, RTD. I've always got my hanky out. How many more seasons of Doctor Who have you written? You never know, I may have written as many as 5. Feels different this time. Oh, regenerating! You unearthly child.
But as a BBC commissioning editor, I'm going to say to you, this is where it's changed. I'm very concerned about us playing anything that's a bit tonally darker for the children. You know, everyone talks to me about 5:25 or 5:45 on a Saturday night and being scared in the 70s and 60s. But I'm telling you now, as a BBC commissioning editor now, I don't think we can dare risk that. So are you saying we're going to go darker and we remove the tea time slot? What are you saying to me?
I'm saying look at when the show was broadcast in the 70s. Look at the audience that was enjoying it at that time. Now, I would conversely say, are we suggesting that children today or young teens are so emotionally fragile that they can't handle this? Because they're consuming a lot of the most egregious content on their own initiative through streaming services. So it beggars belief to think that young people would not still be drawn to the thrill of being scared and enjoying that experience. That's the primary reason there's a continuing run of these slash and killer movies that they keep airing and putting out at the cinema again and again and again. They're cheap to make, and yet teens keep going back and enjoying them over and over and over again. It may not be everyone's cup of tea, but clearly they aren't scared off.
So what do you want? What's going to be a typical Doctor Who episode? Will it be serialized or one-offs? Will there be cliffhangers as they used to have? Will it be a classic scream? Will it be designed to actually engage and thrill in that way, or will it be just find out what happens next episode? How are you wanting that to be pitched? Because we do have a concern about safe spaces, people's mental health, all our policies here, and we just, I mean, as RTD said when he used to be showrunner, he mentioned Davros, and he really shouldn't be in a life support machine. So we're very concerned about our public, and we're very concerned about how Doctor Who is pitched in future. So we really will listen to every word you say in this section about what you're wanting an episode to look like and tonally exactly where it will go.
Well, you've absolutely got to have very powerful world building during the first installment of a story. I want to go back to a serialized format. The serialized format works best if you've got effective cliffhangers that buck up the end of each one. You want to have at least one good, scary cliffhanger during a given story. Yeah, you can actually have periodically of what will you happen next. Sometimes it's very hard to build up to a perfectly thrilling jump scare cliffhanger at the end of 25 minutes. But you have to have at least one, because that's what people are going to hang their hats on. You need to have the Doctor come in as an outsider in some kind of horrifying situation and actually put together the keys. He's the individual that comes up with the solution that everyone else is able to operate with. In fact, that was one of the drawbacks of recent interpretations of the Doctor. The Doctor never resolved anything. It resolved itself where the companion came up with the answer, in which case all he was the chauffeur, the taxi driver, bringing the companion from place to place, and that's not what he should be.
Secrets to unlock. Clever boy.
Right, we're very keen to know what you mean by some of the answers you've given today in this interview. So, if you can just enlighten us now, and after this interview, we're going to go and watch what you refer to. So, in other words, can you be very careful with your selection now? You're going to make a modern version of Doctor Who. Now, a modern version that touches back on... Are there any stories you want us to watch again, and you're promising us a modern version of that, so that we can kind of get the cut of your jib about what you're trying to do in a modern way? So, what stories from the past are you saying I could do a Doctor Who version that would have this essence?
Well, talking about alternate universes, Inferno is a good story to revisit, so you have a sense of what it's like to go to a version of this universe where things have gone wrong. Playing with Enemy of the World, where you actually go back and visit what could essentially be an evil counterpart of the Doctor, and it gives the actor a chance to actually stretch their teeth playing a very divergent role of the role that they play. You can go back and see many of the 60s stories dealing with the Daleks to see exactly how the Daleks need to be presented in a meaningful way on the screen, with the associated cliffhangers and impacts connected to them. But I would also dare say, go back and look at some of these stories to see how the companion actually interrelated with the Doctor, whether you were talking about Ian and Barbara and the first Doctor, or you're talking about Sarah Jane and the fourth Doctor. You want to go back and see how these dynamics actually work and which were the strongest, so that you know how to play with those going forward into a new version of the show.
Now, RTD, often when he was showrunner, kind of had a balance of earthbound stories and a few set in space. We know Series 7 famously had a whole series on Earth, and then it moved on a little bit on Earth, and then a few... So we're very interested where you want to go with this. Where is future Doctor Who going to be? Will it be earthbound modern, like RTD seems to have popularized? Will it be earthbound? Will it be all in space? Where are we going with this new look Doctor Who?
I would be tempted to go all in space. The first knee-jerk reaction is, how can you generate stories that will not bust the budget? And the way you do that is by consistency of set, consistency of location shooting. Obviously, in 1970, it worked well to do something that was earthbound, Earth locations, not a lot of set constructions. It was easy to condense the budget at that time. Our circumstances today aren't quite the same. We have the ability to focus on just a few stories, but if it's just a few stories in a season, you can actually get more bang for your buck crafting those specific worlds. And because the Earth-centric focus has been overdone recently, it's very tempting to break away from that and focus on otherworldly locations. I think that's a better bet.
Now, the other thing, because we can't help it, we've had Russell T Davies over a 20-year period on and off, so we do often use him as our template for the future Doctor Who showrunner. He often used to say to us in various pictures at various points, he said Doctor Who would be like Buffy, Doctor Who would be like Strange Worlds, Doctor Who would be Stranger Things, sorry, Doctor Who would be like Star Trek. I'm going to ask you now, because I've asked you how, I will look at some of those classics you mentioned to see if you've got the gist of what we were thinking we want. Buffy, Sapphire and Steel, Tomorrow People, Blake Seven, Star Trek, Star Wars, Buck Rogers, Supernatural, EastEnders, Dallas. What do you think the future Doctor Who should be stylized like?
Probably classic Doctor Who. One of the problems that we have is the tendency to try and tailor a show to mimic something else that seems to have the cultural zeitgeist going, the current buzz. The problem is Doctor Who is so distinct in its image, in its profile, that it doesn't lend itself well to being reinterpreted through another lens. That there's a strong tendency to go entirely meta, to be tongue in cheek, to kind of poke fun at it when you start bringing in other styles, because you're very self-conscious of it. If you look at the Bridgerton episode of Disney Who, it was clearly by name tapping into something that appeared to be popular, thinking, okay, this is popular, so we're going to capitalize on it. Those moments always feel contrived. They aren't natural. So you need to allow the series to breathe and exist on its own merits. And that means what you do is go back and look, what were the stories? What were the incarnations of the Doctor? What were the time periods in which the show had the greatest level of success? And then measure those specific metrics to determine how you can apply them to a reinterpretation of the show at the present time.
Quickly, men, quickly. Excellent. Good thinking, good thinking. Babe, come in and meet the Daleks. I knew I should find them here. They look harmless, not very lively. Nothing human, no. But there are 3 Daleks in here. What's happened to the other one? Doctor! It was a sort of disembodied hand, a sort of claw.
Now, we've got an awful lot of people we want to interview for this role, so we might get back to you one day. But I'm going to ask you some quick fire ones now. And the quick fire ones are, please keep your answers very concise. I want to go and play golf this afternoon.
Those golf balls aren't going to hit themselves.
Yeah, I know. I'm trying to imagine what these BBC executives are like. They're never in the bloody office, are they? Anyway, so, yeah, quick answers, please, because these are right. Okay, then. Oh God, we're trying to visualize the future of Doctor Who, and the TARDIS always crops up as a problem. We spent a bomb on that TARDIS for RTD, and yet all the Doctor Who fans seem to whinge about it. So, what sort of TARDIS are you envisioning?
Stylistically, I do like the steampunk imagery of the McGann TARDIS, but the bottom line is you've got to bring it in, make it smaller, make it more intimate, and you've got to give it texture. The problem with the Disney version is that was a very sterile looking environment. Going back to the 60s, it was simplistic because that's what the budget demanded. That's what television allowed for. But we're not in that time period. We can now actually make a very rich looking character out of the TARDIS in a way that the most recent incarnation did not reflect.
Okay, TARDIS Crew. We understand from Unearthly Child onwards, we've had sometimes 3 companions down to 1 companion. I know there's been a story or 2 with no companions. So basically, we're trying to work out what you're wanting to do. Number 1, we want to know how you can envision the size of the TARDIS crew. 2, we want to know whether they'll be human, past, present, or modern, or alien.
I do like the idea of probably having a couple of companions. When you go beyond 2, now you're talking about a crowded TARDIS, and it's hard to give all of the characters the time on screen that they need. If you go down to 1 companion, that's been done to death. A pair of companions is a little bit less common, but can work well if the dynamic between those 2 is very strong. And it depends on how you want that relationship to develop. I would probably choose someone from the past and someone from the future, or an alien, someone who's not necessarily human at all, to give an entirely different texture to the crew. But the magic number of 3 seems to be the one I'd be shooting for.
Big budget or low budget?
I would try and go modest budget. Big budget does not show up on the screen. They spent volumes for Disney Who, and beyond a few episodes where a few scenes appeared to have some money thrown at it, you couldn't really tell anywhere else. So the idea is to do more with less. Obviously, you're not going to say, we're going to hire a studio and everyone's going to do it on the fly and do it for free. You're going to have to pay someone something. But the idea is to keep the rate moderate.
Right. Imagine we are talking to lots of potential showrunners and you are in the last 2. Imagine that. And you're neck and neck.
Oh boy.
And this is the tiebreaker. Can you sell me your version of Doctor Who in a tagline or in 1 sentence or with keywords? If you tell me now what the taste or feel or look of your Doctor Who will be in a line, keywords, or tagline, go.
This is Doctor Who. Bam. That's it. You've got the image. If you have the right image, you have the right meme, the right shot, the right picture, and it's an image that shows you what it should be. That means you're banking everything on the gravitas of the actor personifying the role, as well as the color and backdrop surrounding the Doctor that reveals what the tone of the show is going to be, which means you're not going to have someone with groomed nails and decorations on each, reaching out through a rainbow to the audience. That's not Doctor Who. This is Doctor Who. And it's a very visual impact.
Well, thank you for giving me your time. The BBC will consider. We have to check all our tick lists and everything, whether you're hitting the criteria as a Texan, whether that fits. We might, is it okay if we kind of check all your credentials?
Oh, yes, by all means, by all means.
Well, Christian, we're no longer friends because I've obviously enjoyed doing that job interview.
Indeed so. You're good at this.
So just as we wrap up, if everybody's still with us, I mean, you've got a lot there from Christian and lots of different ideas to do with Doctor Who, and some of them will register with you and some of them may not. And please come on, everybody else, yourself with your ideas. But when you think of where Doctor Who is, where it's been, I have to say, as my final thing, and I'll just get your opinion. I did ask you about hard reboot and all the rest of it. I'm amazed how in 2 years I've gone from the position of continuity, of course, and blah blah blah, to actually wanting pretty hard reboot. I no longer am buying into this Doctor 16, Doctor 17. And that was one question I was nearly going to ask you, and I could still ask you now, which is basically, would your Doctor be a continuation, or would we just see them appear? Would you show the regeneration? You see, I'm warming to the idea that it's a hard reboot, that the best you can do is have some Doctor who's injured. We don't know anything about him, what number he is. He could be on a rock, he could have broken his limbs. Basically, he's just regenerated. So we get all that crap out the way. And this is the very beginning. And if later on it becomes a success, we can then show the regeneration for all those Doctor Who fans who don't want, a gap. But I actually think the Ninth Doctor worked because we were in. It would be great if that Ninth Doctor was just fresh from his regeneration. That's my personal opinion. So, yeah, continuity, hard reboot, Doctor number, that sort of thing. What are your thoughts?
2 years ago, I thought the best thing to do was find a way to narratively fix the damage that had been done previously. But after 2 years of unremitting disaster from RTD, I'm now of the mind that we absolutely need a hard reboot. And it needs to be something akin to what we saw with the Ninth Doctor. You don't necessarily see the regeneration. You can go back if it's a success and do an episode or a chapter that explains things if you want to bridge them. But it's probably better to just let what we've seen pass under the bridge. It's gone, it's washed away, and focus on the present and the future, because the character and the property is still powerful. It still has stories that it can tell, but it can't do it while it's carrying dead weight of toxic episodes and canonically busting stories in the bag behind it. It's not going to move. So you've got to be able to jettison that. And this is the simplest way.
Okay, well, thank you very much, Mr. Christian Horton, Divine and Dragon there. Thank you very much. We may get back to you, we may not bother, but oh, there's I think the Sense Sphere might be in touch. But thank you for that, and we'll do another one of these, and please, everybody write in, well, you've got it up there, sensorsphere@gmail.com or at sensorsphere on X. Please write to me. You could be in the hot seat as well. I will be friendly. But basically, I'll enjoy also being the commissioning editor, and I'll ask you questions, the same questions, to be quite honest. And we'll see what ideas we get as a collective of Doctor Who fans, young, old, and all the rest of it. So thank you very much, Christine, for being our guinea pig.
Absolutely. Pleasure being here.
Goodbye, everyone.
Any luck?
No, how about you?
No. Barbara should be here by now. Barbara? We've waited long enough for her.